Hey, good morning, everyone. So wonderful to see all of you. I love our new faces, our old faces. Just grateful we can be here all together. Today I want to talk about God's principles in real life. I was inspired by Nadim's message last week. Let's give a round of applause to Nadim. What an amazing testimony. If you didn't hear it, you can go on our Facebook page or YouTube channel and listen to it. He basically shared his life testimony up to getting blessed. And I heard so many good things. I had to listen. I didn't listen to it immediately, but I kept hearing from people throughout the week, like Nadim's story. Like, I can't wait to hear part 2. One of the funnest things I heard was from a friend, and she said, I've been trying to wake up earlier in the morning, but Nadim's testimony really inspired me to get up at 5. Because what if one of my kids' friends needs to come to me at 5 o'clock in the morning? I need to be awake for them. So cute. But something that I really loved about your message, Nadim, was how you could look back at your challenging times, the pivotal moments, and the blessings in your life, and then it was so clearly you could show how principle showed up, and how God's word showed up in your life. And you probably didn't always notice it in the moment, but looking back, right, you can see that God's principles were there. So for me, this illustrates that God is absolute, eternal, and unchanging, and His word and the principles are absolute, eternal, and unchanging. I have a couple of Bible verses to share about this. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. And the counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of His heart to all generations. So, in our faith, in the Unificationist faith, we have a book, a text we call the Divine Principle. And this is the guidelines for our life of faith. And I think that it's kind of easy to fall into this thinking of, the Divine Principle it's our religious text. It's our theology. It's the description of what we believe. And it is, but more importantly, the Divine Principle is an expression or an observation of principles or rules or themes at work in the world and the universe. The framework of the creation of the world, of how things work, how things are supposed to work. But also, what happens when the principle or the framework or the rules are deviated from, and what are the consequences of that? And then how do we return to what God originally intended? So, whether you ascribe to our theology or not, that doesn't affect how the principles of the universe show up in your life. Those apply equally to all people. It's universal. When anybody is living according to the design and processes that God created and intended, even if we don't consciously do it, even if we don't believe in God, if we are living according to those principles, we're resonating on a level that's closer to God, and the results in our life will reflect that. And conversely, when we stray from God's design, if we operate selfishly, when we break the guidelines and order that God created us to live and thrive in, we're going to experience the fallout from that. And it doesn't matter if you're a believer. It doesn't matter if you say, oh yes, I believe in this. If we're not living it, we're not exempt from it. It applies equally to all people. No one's locked out from the benefits of God's love and the principle, and no one is exempt from the consequences of not living according to God's design. So I was inspired to kind of think back on my life, and just kind of quickly this morning I thought, what principles have I seen show up in my life over and over again? And I came up with 3, and I think this is a really wonderful exercise. So I encourage you to also take some time this week and think, how has practicing the principle resulted in differences in my life? How has maybe me straying from the principle resulted in different results in my life? Because I think you can see it everywhere. My mom was always like, you can see the divine principle in every movie you watch. If the movie has a happy ending, they follow the principle. If it has a sad ending, they didn't. It's obvious. But some of the principles that I have always proved true in my life. 1, I do not exist for my own sake. In the divine principle, it says, in God's ideal, there cannot be any individual purpose which does not support the whole purpose, nor can there be any whole purpose that does not guarantee the interests of the individual. So I have found that when I can give, for the most part selflessly, for a greater purpose, then this results in goodness in my life, sooner or later. It's not always immediate. When I offered my time on STF and missions for a few years, there were a lot of times when it was really challenging, or I felt like I wasn't seeing the results, and sometimes I felt like I'm a worse person than I was when I started. Maybe I was just seeing myself more clearly. But so many good things have resulted out of that in my life, and I think it's because I put myself in a position to strengthen my muscle of giving and of sharing love, and especially to give without expectation of receiving back, of really making an offering. And when we make an offering, I feel like sometimes it's like, oh, I'll give and then I want something back. But an offering to God is no strings attached. And I felt like that was what in the end, I was able to do, and it has only resulted in good things in my life. But I also know so clearly, I feel it immediately, that if I'm doing something for the sake of getting attention, or the sake of receiving, or I'm going to do this for Mike and he better return it, I will immediately feel so yucky inside. And it doesn't even matter if I end up getting what I want. I'm not satisfied. So for me, this is a truth of the principle that has proved true every time in my life, that I do not exist for my own sake. Another principle that shows up true for me in my life is what I do matters. Pastor Mike talked about this a few weeks ago. He shared this part of this, more than this quote. As an individual, each one of us is a product of the history of the providence of restoration. Hence, the person who is to accomplish the purpose of history is none other than I, myself. So, it took me a while to adjust to this idea, because I think it's easy to just feel like I'm just living my life. I just am who I am. I've got the circumstances that I'm in, and what I do might affect the immediate people around me, but it's not, it's just that. But something that I really strongly believe in now is that not only is what I do affecting my life and my future, or maybe the people I'm interacting with, but it means something to God and it means something to history. Because I didn't just come about on my own. I came about because of history. I am a result of my parents and their parents and their parents. I'm a result of my culture and where I grew up and my ancestry and the country that I am born into. All of these things I represent. And when I can do something that my parents couldn't do, that my ancestors couldn't do, that my culture or my country couldn't do, I'm restoring something that represents all of that. And that means something to God. And that actually changes the trajectory of my future, my family's lineage, my country and my culture. All of those things can be shifted by me taking that position as a representative. I can restore breakdown in my family. I represent the victories and failures of my ancestors, my country, my culture, and I have the opportunity to indemnify mistakes and uplift my family, my country, and my culture. I think that was a big shift for me to come to understand, because I believe that God is working in the world, and many times I felt like, oh, I just need to sacrifice for the world, or I need to get out of God's way. But it was a big shift for me to feel like, no, actually, I am a crucial part of that. God needs to work through me too. And another one that came to me when I was thinking of this is unity in relationships is key. So I'm going to share from Divine Principle and True Mother's words on this. The four-position foundation is the fundamental foundation of goodness. It is the realization of God's purpose of creation. It is the fundamental foundation for the life of all beings, providing all the forces necessary for their existence and enabling God to abide in them. Therefore, the four-position foundation is God's eternal purpose of creation. And then here's a quote from our True Mother. Divine Principle of the Unification Church teaches that energy is produced when a subject partner and object partner become one. In a family, parents hold the position of the subject partner and children hold the position of the object partner. Once they have a reciprocal relationship of love, they become one entity, a true family. This entity then becomes a new object partner that can unite with a larger subject partner. With God as the subject partner, the parent-child union becomes one with God. We can also say that when a perfect subject-object partnership is formed with God, centering on the ideal of love, God and humankind can exist in total oneness. When the realm of love between God and humanity becomes a reality, the light of love will shine throughout the universe as bright and constant as the sun. So the truth of this for me is that everything exists in relationships. Absolutely nothing can exist on its own. And even more importantly, the sum of a relationship equals more than the value of the two parts separately. This is like 1 + 1 = 3. I've found so many times in my life that I feel like I know what I want to do, and I know what is the right thing to do, and that's what I want to do. And a lot of times I do that, and it's good, it's fine, it's okay. But when I do something together with someone else, which always involves a little bit of compromising or figuring out or letting go of part of my idea, the result of that always ends up better than I had originally envisioned it being. I've shared many times my story of I'm not going to go into the whole story, but when I went to Korea, to Cheonggyeong, I was in our spiritual retreat, and I realized how angry I was at Mike about so many things, and how right I was, and I felt like it's kind of like my way or the highway. Like, I am obviously right here. And God just asked me a question after I let it all out, and I was like, expressed everything I could about it. God just was like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Do you want to be right and know that you're right and that's like your prize? Or do you want to create a really loving family? And I was like, oh, yeah, I really want the loving family. And what we've done together is so much better than if I had just stuck to like, no, it has to be my way. I have to do things my way. I'm right. That was a really clear, it was like crystal clear God speaking to me experience of that. But I've had that experience in so many other ways too. In running our school, there's many times where like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to be good for the kids. And then I talk to my guides, or I talk to the kids, and it's like, what do you think? What do you want to do? And they're like, well, actually, how about this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And then we do it, and it's like so much better than what I had originally envisioned. Because there's energy. It's the give and take action. When you are in relationship, not selfish relationship, right? This is the distinction. Relationship centered on God. Relationship centered on a higher purpose. For the sake of something greater, then energy is created. And the result is more than what the two individual separate beings could do on their own. 1 + 1 = 3. Finding a way to move forward together with others is more fulfilling and more fruitful than just doing what I think I want. So I feel like I could probably look back through all the different experiences in my life and find how principle applied or showed up, or the consequences of when I didn't stick to it, right? But these are 3 things that I felt like are themes that just keep showing up for me again and again and again. That I do not exist for my own sake, what I do matters, and unity in relationships is key. This is a quote from our true father, Reverend Moon. The unification principle connects everything by the laws of nature. That is why it's called the principle. It's heaven's principle. That is to say, it is the eternally unchanging principle. So you can give it terms or words like give and take action, 4-position foundation, the history of the providence of restoration and I. But with or without the labels, these are universal principles that apply across all people and all times. The truth of the Unification Church is not only a truth that was revealed through struggles in its own history, it's truth that existed even before the creation. It's God's ideal of creation to establish a true family, a true tribe, a true people, a true nation, and a true world based on a relationship with true parents. And then this is from the divine principle itself. The words proclaimed on these pages are only a portion of this truth. This volume is merely a compilation of what his disciples have hitherto heard and seen. We believe and hope that when the time is right, more profound portions of the truth will be published. So I like to say that everything is encompassed within the divine principle, broadly. Everything can kind of fit into that framework. And yet, it's still an expression of the truth. The truth is God, right? The truth is what stems from God's heart and love, and everything pours out from that and creates order from that. And where I want to go with this is that this is why it's so important for us to seek to develop our personal relationship with God. I know some people who are really into the theology, and they know every answer to any quiz about the divine principle. But the divine principle is an expression of who God is in God's heart. And to really understand the fullness of it, to be able to really see it in all aspects of our life, we have to go to the source of God's heart. That's where we find the fullness of God's love and truth. So if we can be in one thing, so what I was inspired about from Nadim's message is that when we look back, we can find the divine principle, right? We can see how it's at play. But here's another thing. What if we're intentional about practicing the divine principle, right? Rather than being passive and like, oh, this is how it worked when I accidentally did the right things and it worked out, right? But what if we seek to understand divine principle? We seek to understand God's heart and then intentionally make our decisions, intentionally live that way. Then I feel like restoration, progress in our life can happen so much more quickly. So my encouragement for you this week is it's kind of a fun exercise. Reflect on your life so far, both the good and the bad, the big moments, but also, just as importantly, the quietly meaningful ones, and see what principles were at play, what lessons have we learned, and how can we go forward resonating with God even more. So please join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, thank you for such a beautiful morning, beginning of February, where life is continuing on and we are moving forward, and every day and every moment of our life, you are moving with us, and we are trusting in you. Sometimes it's hard for us to see how you're working, and I pray that we can open up our hearts to see how your love is present in our life, how your principles show up in our life. We can trust you in that. But that we can also move forward intentionally with you. Make decisions with you. That we can remember that we are a product of history. That we can remember that your love is unchanging no matter what. That we can remember that we don't exist for our own sake. And if we can live that way, then you can be more present in our life, that we can feel your love more clearly, and that we can become a channel of your love and presence and goodness to those around us even more. We know you're working in our life, and it's not only for our sake, but you want to work through us to do great things for this world, to transform people's hearts. And we just want to offer ourselves, without those strings attached, right? Offer ourselves to be that channel for you. And I offer this time and prayer in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick, a Blessed Angel family. Amen and adieu. Okay, thank you.